Well, you probably recall that JetBlue flight attendant Stephen Slater had some choice words for his passengers before he made that now infamous exit from the airplane. But in the almost 3 months since, Slater has been silent about what drove him to quit his job in such dramatic fashion. I sat down with Slater, and this morning we hear his side of the story for the first time.
Stephen Slater says the flight began with the typical high-stress boarding, passengers competing for overhead luggage space. He went to intervene and says that's when a female passenger's bag hit him in the head. Bleeding from a cut, Slater says the situation escalated upon the plane's arrival in New York, when he claims the same passenger verbally abused him because he couldn't provide her bag. Slater then took to the PA system and began swearing at the entire plane.
The few of us that were still waiting to get off, I turned around and looked at them and said, did this just happen? Did he just swear at a passenger on the intercom?
He then grabbed his bags and a few beers before activating the emergency chute and sliding to freedom. Overnight support for his take this job and shove it moment was all over Facebook, on t-shirts, and on the airwaves.
If we all had an inflatable escape slide at our jobs, I bet 80% of us would quit like that.
Anybody out there looking for a job, there is an opening for a flight attendant at JetBlue. That's right.
But as his folk hero status grew, passengers began telling a very different story, that Slater was disheveled and erratic and appeared to be intoxicated the entire flight.
What did you see during that flight?
Throughout the entire flight, I noticed that he was being very rude, much ruder than I normally expect from service on an airplane.
Just last week, Slater pled guilty to 2 attempted criminal mischief charges, but under a plea deal will avoid jail time by undergoing a year of counseling and substance abuse treatment. He will also pay a $10,000 fine.
And Stephen Slater joins us now. Good morning. Good to have you here.
Good morning. Nice to see you.
So let's go right away to that now infamous August 9th flight from Pittsburgh to New York's Kennedy Airport. Several passengers say that you appeared to be under the influence. Were you drinking on the job that day?
Yes. Truthfully, I will admit that it was one of those days that drove me to drink, and I admit that I did have a little sip.
Do you have a drinking problem?
I am a recovering alcoholic.
Did JetBlue know you had a drinking problem?
I have been candid with the airline from day one.
Do you think if perhaps you hadn't been drinking that day, you wouldn't have acted like this?
No, I think it was time to go. Whether I would have left in such a spectacular fashion, I certainly don't know.
At what point did you get on the overhead PA and begin to say obscenities?
It was already in my hand, and I just kind of went with it. And I said, to the person that told me what I could do, here's a flash, you can do that yourself.
Why on the PA?
It was there, I was angry, I was in a little bit of a state of rage. I'd had it. I was absolutely done at that moment.
So what did you think was going to happen? I mean, you had sworn on the PA system, you had grabbed a beer or two from the galley, you had activated the emergency chute, slid down, got into your car, and drove home. What did you think was going to happen next?
I didn't obviously think that through. Obviously, I knew I was going to have an internal issue with my employer.
Slater, why are you smiling?
Did you think, though, police were going to show up?
No, I didn't think
you didn't think you were going to be arrested for this?
I knew there'd be questions, certainly. No, I really, again, I wasn't really thinking about that at that moment. It was just, I gotta go, and that's where I was.
Did you go home and tell your partner, I think I just really screwed up, I just quit?
It was all so surreal and so fast. What I did do was, I went home and I said to poor Ken, I said, honey, those wonderful travel benefits that we've enjoyed for the last few years, I said, it's time to get to know a good local travel agent.
Some really great people out there.
You yourself know best what your mental, emotional, physical state was that day. Do you think at any point your passenger's safety was at risk?
I really don't. I think that I probably wasn't as, well, clearly, as pleasant and sparkly and perky as, one would hope that their crew might have been.
But your job there is to ensure their safety.
It is. And I was not impaired to any extent that I was not able to do so.
Something had happened, God forbid, on that flight, and you were in charge of evacuating these passengers. Were you able to do your job?
I would have definitely been able to do so, and I actually did show that I could open a door and I could indeed assess my conditions and open a door and operate the equipment as needed.
Do you think you owe the passengers on that flight an apology?
Well, to those people that do feel that they were mistreated, I'm sorry that hurt their feelings. Unfortunately, yes, there was something going on with myself and another customer, and unfortunately, it did spill over and affect the experience of my other customers, and I do take that to heart.
What do you say to the people who celebrated your take this job and shove it moment?
I would say to those people, obviously, address your concerns, address your issues, work to the best of your ability to better your position, but keep it in check.
In the aftermath of this whole incident, authorities did try and find this female passenger who you say hit you on the head, perhaps inadvertently. Right. Nobody said, they said they couldn't find her. Why couldn't they find this passenger if everything went down the way you said?
I don't know, and I'm very curious about that. I do know that the final altercation was later during the flight, and it wasn't necessarily in view of a lot of people. I do know that this person obviously would not come forward and say, yes, I did this, because that person would be facing about $25,000 worth of fines as well.
What do you think JetBlue's responsibility is in all of this? Or is there any responsibility for the airline?
I think there's tremendous culpability in the airline industry at whole. I think
for what you did?
At the end of the day, again, I am accepting responsibility, but I do believe that there were many, many contributing factors that came together to create this, and many of them are within the airline's control. Why are we charging people to check their luggage? Obviously, everything in the world is going to come on board.
You're actually getting offers now to come speak to people about what?
I don't know. I'm absolutely surprised. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm still putting my pants on one leg at a time. I'm still me. So why, I get the nerve that this has struck with people, but it still seems very surreal to me.
Well, Stephen Slater, thank you very much for being with us this morning. We appreciate it.
Pleasure.